Journalism at the ABC, including the end of Lateline, shouldn't really have come to as a surprise to anybody who's been watching. There have been a few announcements in recent times about trying to take ABC journalism beyond the police rounds blotter in the morning, beyond, as Paul Keating famously put it, the truck that's upturned on the Pacific Highway, and towards more in-depth coverage of national events, which is of course exactly what Lateline used to be renowned for. Lateline was cut very badly after the 2014 cuts by the Abbott government, and now it's being put out of its misery. I hope that what the ABC is doing is placing a renewed emphasis on news that is not a mere commodity, news that's more than what you can find anywhere, anytime on your mobile devices. I would like you to be thinking about your children and your grandchildren as much or more than yourselves. I'd like you to be thinking about their consumption habits. Quite simply, Google and Facebook are currently the most powerful publishers that the world has ever known. And beside them, the power of Rupert Murdoch pales to a shadow. If we keep talking and stressing and being paranoid about Rupert Murdoch, we will miss the present and the future. I'm not saying it isn't an issue. I, more than most, know that it's an issue and have put myself on the line a few times talking about that issue, but it's not today's issue, and it's certainly not tomorrow's issue.
And that brings me back to the staff, particularly the staff that have left with all their experience. What I wanted to do today, and why I muscled in on your program, is to announce the formation of a new group, an ABC alumni group, which I hope will be able to harness the knowledge, the experience and the support of the hundreds of former ABC staff who still care very passionately about the place. I know a lot of them are very committed to the ABC for all its faults, and I think they still have a very vital contribution to make. They can advise, they can mentor, they can lobby, and of course join in with you guys, the friends. We can have friends and relations in policy debates and speaking to government, etc.
Arising from all of this, I don't need to tell you how much Australians value the ABC. They trust our national broadcasters, the ABC brand. We shouldn't see issues of maintaining diversity and maintaining strong media and strong content production as either or propositions. You can have one but not have the other. You should be able to have all of them. And by having all of them, you also enable a strong public broadcasting sector. And this type of view about anything competing with commercial media being a threat, look, it's something that you would expect from a commercial media broadcaster. There's nothing wrong with that because they have particular obligations to their shareholders. But it's not the view that I maintain you should get from a government or a Prime Minister who is meant to represent the Australian principle, the Australian people. Now, I can assure you that there is a unanimous view across our caucus that the ABC must be properly funded. We don't have the divisions that the government has at the moment, where you've got the Erica Bettses and the IPAs of the world who don't think the ABC should be funded at all. We should just privatise our national broadcasters. You've also got these other views from Nationals MPs who are only concerned about what you can hear on the radio in their areas. So I can assure you we're not fractured. And I can also assure you that I will continue to engage with Friends of the ABC, as I have been doing for the last year as I've been in this role, and I find it very instructive and a very informative source of policy advice.
Change is a constant in journalism, and the speed of change, and as a result the demands on the ABC, will only become more intense. Anyway, the majority of changes should and probably will come from inside the corporation, and we are starting to see evidence of that under Michelle Guthrie, roughly a year into her tenure. And that's not to say that all change is good, or that the efforts to chart new courses for the ABC won't fail. I'm sure they will. And they may well fail more often than they succeed. And the trick will be, and always has been, but the trick will be knowing when to accept failure and move on, to work out where the audiences are and where the money should be spent on truly serving them. And I think the ABC is better placed than most media organisations to succeed.
Turning off shortwave to the South Pacific, as you all know, was dumb. It hurt PNG and the islands, and it hurt Australia, our abiding interests in the region. Now, the shocking part in this, was that the ABC was actually quite mendacious in the way it went about this. And I'm glad that I'm still naive enough to be shocked when the ABC, with its wonderful reputation, our favourite auntie, its ability for high technical standards, can actually do something that can actually shock me. Because the ABC spent a couple of years actually sabotaging its own shortwave signal into the South Pacific.
Right. I think Play School is a really great program, but it's one program. And as adults, we don't expect to watch one program. And we've got a lot of different needs. And if you think about the children's audience, then some of them are 3 and they're not at school yet, and some of them are getting ready for that big step to high school. And there's a lot of different things that you might want children to experience across that age group. And so I would say if we're looking at what do we think a public broadcaster should do, well, you'd aspire to a public broadcaster service that had the whole sweep of content just as it does for us. You'd hope for drama, you'd hope for news, you'd hope for programs that might educate you, you'd hope for programs that might entertain you, some comedy, some factual content. That's what I think a public broadcaster should provide for the children's audience. I think it's really important. But the question today was whether or not the ABC is meeting its charter obligations to different audiences. And I need to tell you all that children don't rate a mention in the ABC charter.
Australia, and of course our union has therefore a number of concerns across all of those areas about both the ABC's remit and also its ability to deliver on that remit in its current funding circumstances. And for equity, for our folks who are involved in children's production in particular, there's a real concern about the ABC. Of course, as you've heard, they are not bound by the same quota system that the commercials are, but they've also very recently quietly backed down on their commitment that they would produce 50% of their children's content would be Australian produced.
I would very much like to thank ABC Friends for inviting the Australia Institute along today and for inviting me to be a part of the second all-women panel. I don't think I've ever had that happen at a conference I've been to, so that's really great. More than half of Australians do not trust commercial media. And I'd just like you to think about that for a little while. That's 1 in 2 Australians do not trust commercial media. I think that's a huge thing for us to consider. Only 10% of people that we surveyed trusted commercial media. I think that speaks volumes about the health of our debate and about why public broadcasters like the ABC are so important.
So in this, I guess, age of rising new media, what I guess we're seeing with this generation of what some people might call digital natives is a generation that's grown up never knowing what it's like to not have the internet or the iPhone or, you know, whatever it is, to have all of this information at your fingertips, quite literally. So even though all of the ways that young people are engaging with content is really different, they all have one thing in common, which is, as Ebony mentioned, it's all about trust. Which makes sense. You look for information that you know is reliable and that you can trust.
You know, from the perspective of a person who represents ABC staff, and it's a huge honour to do so, the idea that it is the ABC management that are the sole custodians and owners and drivers of change in the ABC is a complete and utter nonsense. ABC staff play an instrumental role in innovating and supporting and driving change in that workplace and for their audiences. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that when the ABC is at its greatest and when it is the most innovative and when it is doing the most inspiring work, it is when the management and the staff are working together to drive that change and to make that change. What we don't want to be doing, whether it's the Friends or the unions or any other interest group out there that supports the ABC, is being seen as white-handing progress.
So it's such an interesting question about how do we get young people involved to, rally to keep the ABC, because it comes back to what I was saying about showing the value of that independent, trustworthy voice and demonstrating to young people that actually the ABC really cares about you, and here's how we're showing you that.